Hi and welcome to the Club Leadership Webinar for October 2012. My name is Scott Williams. I am the Membership Director for the League of American Bicyclists and your host for these Club Leadership Webinars. I am very pleased to have a great panel here tonight and an awful lot of people interested in the topic, and I hope willing to add their knowledge on the subject of group rides, how to effectively plan your ride calendar, and how to actually conduct a successful ride on the day of the event. It's something that almost all our member clubs are doing, and we've got a lot of interest in the topic as a result. My panel tonight is Steve Diamond of the Morris Area Freewheelers, Dana McEwen of the Portland, Maine Velo Club, and Michael Reuter, who is with the Kansas City Metro Bicycle Club and Power Team Coaching. And again, I would like to thank our sponsor, who is BikeStoreGuys.com. And I'm going to let each of the panelists introduce themselves before we get into the substance of our presentation. And Steve, tell us who you are.
Yes, I'm the ride coordinator of the Morris Area Freewheelers. I've been doing that job for perhaps 6 or 7 years. MAFW has over 700 members, and our riding area covers northern Jersey and north central Jersey, as far west as Pennsylvania. We actually schedule over 1,400 rides a year, and that's spread throughout the year because we ride 7 days a week during the time when daylight savings time is in effect, because we run afternoon rides and afternoon/evening rides during that period, and 5 days a week the rest of the season, the rest of the year. Obviously, we ride in a more concentrated fashion in the fall, summer, and spring, but we ride through the winter. We have a Q-Sheet database with over 600 different tours and that we maintain, and we also have Garmin files available for many of those tours. We have start points all around our target area. I counted that we've used about 60 different start points over the last 2 years. We use, as you might imagine, to handle this kind of a schedule, you need some pretty good software, and we administer our rides program through a custom designed website, which is hosted by a private company. A number of years ago, we went completely paperless. We don't send out newsletters. We don't communicate by paper. Everything's done through the website and online.
Thanks. Dana, tell us a little bit about you.
I'm Dana McEwen. I am with the Portland Velo Club. I'm the vice president of the club, and I'm probably the primary organizer of the Women's Ride. We have approximately 160 members made up of women and men, and a lot of our members are men's masters races. We have that membership consists of riders, triathletes, as I said, a huge masters team. If you've ridden any place or participated in any races in the New England area, you have no doubt seen our OA Cyclomania Masters team out there. We have approximately 200 regularly scheduled rides anywhere from the 1st of March through October, and that's due to daylight and winter conditions up here. A lot of times they'll still go out and ride, sometimes during the winter time for training, depending on road conditions. And we basically administer all of our rides through our website, which is based off a blog platform, and we use Facebook as well as Google groups as a form of communication with all our members and non-members.
And last but certainly not least, Michael.
Michael Reuter. I am actually the board president of the Kansas City Metro Bicycle and owner of Power Team Coaching. For this webinar series, I just pulled, I along with another good friend of mine, we actually do summer ride programs for a local restaurant, and we ride 4 days a week. We have 4 different start locations. We have multiple distances per ride. One of our rides, that's a Thursday night ride, we actually have a mountain bike ride as well. All of them are guided, and we really go out to have a lot of fun. They're more like a family-friendly kind of event. It's just kind of a lot of fun around here. Also, I USA cycling coach, and I coach several of the KCMBC as a cycling team. I coach them and another couple of teams throughout the area.
Terrific. Thank you. Now that we know our panel, let's launch into the substance of the presentation. We're going to start, before we get out on the road, we're going to talk about planning your ride calendar. And Steve, you and the Morris Area Freewheelers have a very extensive ride calendar. So how do you pull all that together? What's the process?
Well, we start on next year's schedule around now. But what we do is the club has a ride planning committee which I chair, and basically the ride planning committee plans the entire ride schedule for a 12-month period using some website planning tools that are available from our software. They do that based on we have broad pace, distance, and terrain criteria based on what time of year it is. For example, during the winter, early spring, late fall, our rides tend to be shorter. During the prime riding season, our rides tend to be longer. We try to balance the schedule geographically around our riding area. After that's completed, each month before the end of the previous month, the committee reviews the ride schedule for the next month. Then we open it, we release it for sign up, for our ride leaders to sign up for any rides that they're interested in leading during the next month. We close that about the end of that month, and then we permit ad hoc rides. After that, during the month, and we have certain criteria that we apply for ad hoc rides, and the ad hoc rides are subject to approval based on guidelines that the ride planning committee has set to keep the schedule from getting chaotic, because we do get quite a number of ad hoc ride proposals throughout the month.
And how many people make up your ride planning committee?
There are about, let's see, about 10 people are on the ride planning committee.
And is this a treasured position? Do you or do you have trouble filling the position, or how does?
Actually, we haven't really had much problem filling it. We have the same people have actually been on the ride planning committee, most of the same people, for some time. So the people who are on it are dedicated members of the club who really enjoy having input onto what rides we schedule.
Great. Dana, do you want to tell us a little bit about your ride planning process?
Sure. So we have a board that's made up of 11 PVC members. Half of those are men, half of those are women. It's a 6-5 split. And in the spring, we actually determine our rides. Most of our rides don't change. We have a standard Monday, Wednesday, Saturday ride, and the men have a very fast race training ride on Tuesdays as well. And these rides vary anywhere from recovery ride for 16 miles to 40 miles that are just all out full gas rides. So a lot of our rides don't change. We do have probably strong leadership within the club for people who show up to quote-unquote lead the rides, but we don't have necessarily a designated ride leader. Because of the way our rides are structured, we do the same loop every single week. The pace is what it is, and we don't have that many huge numbers. Everybody sort of looks out for everybody, and everybody knows the route, so they sort of just run themselves. We do ad hoc rides on Sundays, and again, we use our Facebook or Google group. Somebody might post, hey, I really want to get on some long miles. I want to do, 50-mile hillier type of group. Everybody's welcome to come. This is going to be the pace. It's usually an easier pace. Spouses are welcome, so it's not just a woman's ride or just a men's ride. And everybody just sort of says, yeah, I'm going to go or I'm not going to go. So it's kind of an ad hoc that way, and then we just post it out to Facebook once we've got all the details. So our rides don't change much. They're pretty much set in stone throughout the course of the year.
Thanks. Michael, you had given us kind of the structure of your summer rides, and it sounds like you have a pretty set rotation there. Do you want to say anything more about how that came about or how that works, or do you think you pretty much covered it?
Well, time frame of when we start usually changes. We usually sit down and negotiate that with the restaurant owners. So this past year, we started a little later than we did the year before, just due to other planning issues. But this next 2013, we're already sitting down deciding that we're probably going to start earlier in the year. Everybody was really kind of wanting to take part in the rides. But they're pretty much set in stone. The routes have been the same for the last 4 years, except for the Thursday, because it was a new restaurant way open, so we started some new rides. But those routes will stay the same throughout the year. So that's pretty much it.
Thanks.
I would.
Go ahead.
I would. Our approach is a little different in that we're. Although we start with the previous 12 months ride schedule as a draft for the next ride schedule, the next 12 months, we really we tend to make a lot of changes year to year, and I guess we're a little different in that our one of our main goals is variety. So we try not to repeat the same ride, and we try not to schedule the same ride more than once each month, which we can do because we have, a pretty large database to work with. And that seems to be what the people in our club are looking for. There doesn't seem to be a lot of, we don't seem to get a lot of people wanting to do the same ride week after week, although some people have a tendency to put in the same ride each time they put in an ad hoc. But other than that, we tend to have a pretty varied schedule.
Okay. Dana, now I would like to ask you a little bit more about the women's rides that you've been talking about. From what I understand, and talking with you, preparing for this, you saw a need and a way to help get more women involved in your club and in riding, and you structured the schedule around that need. Tell us more.
We did. So a couple of years ago, our bike shop put out the call to try to get more women in cycling. In the past, Portland Velo Club's been a huge club in the area, but predominantly men. They might have had 5 or 6 women members. And so their goal was, how can we get more women involved in cycling? So we started having a meeting, and then the next thing we know, we get probably 25, 30 people at this meeting. The next thing we know, we're, 60, 70 members strong. And really kind of breaking down some of these stereotypes from Portland Velo Club, because we've always been known as a really fast race club. And even if you talk to women in the area, they go, oh, Portland Velo Club, I can't ride with you. You guys are way too fast. So we said, what can we do to make women feel included in riding? And so we decided that Monday was going to be our recovery ride for those who rode hard and long on the weekends. And it also encouraged new people to come out. And I will say, this is probably the most popular ride of all of our weekly schedules for the women anyway. We get anywhere from 25 to 30 women that show up on these rides in the summertime. And it's just been phenomenal. We keep a pace at about 16 miles an hour, and we don't go any faster, and we strictly enforce that. And then, of course, we have a social component after that. So everybody likes to ride their bike, but they also like to go out for a drink and food and whatnot after. So that has also been a big draw. Then our Wednesday night ride, we actually kind of progress throughout the week, and it becomes a moderately paced ride. It's more of a 17, 18, maybe even 19 mile an hour average. There's a few more climbs in the loop. It's a longer loop. It's almost twice as long as our Monday night ride. But we have designated weight spots. So our goal is to transition women from the Monday night ride once they feel comfortable riding in a group, once they feel comfortable with the pace, comfortable drafting. Then we say, if this is easy for you and if you like this, join us on Wednesday nights, because it's more of the same, only you're going to push yourself a little bit faster, a little bit harder, get a little faster, and whatnot. So we've struggled with that ride a little bit this year, and I'm not exactly sure why, but in years past we've actually done pretty well with that, transitioning riders into this Wednesday night ride. And then Saturday morning is our fastest ride of the week. It's a lot of pace lining. It's a lot of attacks. We have sprint lines. We have 3 sprint lines throughout the loop. And we really encourage girls to come out and try that as well. The Monday evening ride and the Wednesday evening ride are both no-drop rides, so we do have weight spots, but Saturday is a no-weight ride. So if you get dropped from that ride, you're pretty much on your own. But we did find that throughout the season, this year in particular, there would be people that would be on the Google group and go, you know, I'm really just not feeling up to an A ride race pace for Saturday, so I'd like to do a B ride. Is anybody interested? Now, it was interesting that we would have some of the women come out for the Monday night ride or the Wednesday night ride that would say, yeah, I'll ride Saturday if it's going to be a little bit slower paced. And what we were finding was with the steadiness of the ride and even at the B pace, these girls were still coming out and doing an 18, 19 mile an hour average, but because it was a little bit more controlled, no attacks, no sprint lines, that sort of thing, they were able to hang on and still work that pace line a bit. So we've really kind of grown our membership, grown our club, and grown women as cyclists as well through this process.
I've got a couple of questions from people listening about your women's rides. First of all, the ages of the women that ride with your group, can you give us kind of a range?
That's probably the question that I get the most. A lot of people think that these women are 25, 26, maybe 30 years old, but I can tell you that the youngest club member is probably 26, 27. We have very few in that age range. Most of our women are mid-40s to mid-50s, and I can tell you that I have some women on this club that are 52, 56, that I sometimes have a hard time keeping up with, and I'm 45. And these are women that are just fit, and they like to ride their bike, and they like to, you know, work the draft and do a pace line and all of that. So it's not just young women that are out there on these rides. We have got some significant middle-aged women on these rides.
And what is the distance and kind of average speed of the Monday night ride?
Monday night ride is a 16-mile ride. It is a 16-mile-an-hour pace. If we need to have stops, we will and wait for people. We tell them that it's a 14 to a 16-mile-an-hour average. We typically ride at the 16-mile-an-hour average. We discourage people from coming if they can't at least ride the 14-mile-an-hour average pace, just because that slows down the group so much that, you know, when you wait, then you have to wait a really long time for somebody to catch up, and it also delays the ride. So at a 15, 16 mile an hour average, we can pretty much do the whole ride in an hour.
And do the faster women join the men's rides as well?
Yes, we do have some women that do like to ride faster. They don't like to ride slow. They will pick up the men's ride. especially on a Saturday morning. Our Saturday morning ride, we get anywhere from 25 to 30 women on that ride, and then the men's ride can see anywhere from 50 to sometimes 80 riders in the summertime. So if the women decide to ride with the men, there are more places to hide out, so they don't have to actually work quite as hard. So some of them will do that, and it's also a little bit of a challenge too for them to keep up with the men.
Great, and also I'll just let people know that earlier in the year, I think it was early to midsummer, we had an entire panel talking about getting more women involved in cycling, and there was more talk in that panel. You can go back and listen to those presentations or view the slides for that if you go to our club leadership training page and listen to that panel. That goes into a lot more detail. We might get back to some talk about the women's rides as we do questions at the end of the panel. I've got some other questions. I will let people just let you know that we'll talk more specifically about PACE a little bit later on, and we'll also talk a little bit about some insurance issues, although we won't get too deeply into that. I see that theme woven into the questions, and I can talk about that and the League's insurance program a little bit as it comes up. So let me move on and just give Steve an opportunity now to talk about their ad hoc ride planning. Steve, you had mentioned that before, and if you wanted to talk a little bit more about how that process works, and then we're going to hop over and I think we're going to get a quick tour of that functionality on the Morris Area Freewheelers website. So take it away, Steve, and let me know when you want me to turn the screen over.
Okay. Well, as I said, we run around 1,400 rides a year, and I would say at this point about 40% of those rides are coming in through ad hoc. So, and we use website functionality to handle ad hocs, which makes it a lot easier to handle the volume. When people put in ad hoc rides, they come to the ride coordinator for approval. The Ride Planning Committee has established guidelines for the approval of ad hoc rides. Now, you know, some people have suggested to me that we should approve all ad hoc rides, but we have found that in order to keep the schedule reasonable and to avoid conflicts between similar rides and over repetition of the same tours, we needed to establish some guidelines that are published so that everyone who's putting in an ad hoc ride in our club, anybody who's proposing an ad hoc ride, has a pretty good idea of what the guidelines are. Primarily, we don't want people to put in rides that conflict with other similar rides that are already in the schedule, and we don't want people to put in tours that are already in the schedule for a date not far in the future from that ride. We feel that given the size of our cue sheet database, there's really no reason to have repetition within a short period of time of our rides. But once a ride is approved, it's automatically broadcast to all members interested in that particular pace of ride, and it's listed in the online schedule. I can give you a quick. Shall I give a quick demo of how that works, Scott? Scott?
Yep, here we go. Sorry, I was muted.
Okay.
I'm turning the screen over to you.
Okay. Well, suppose that I wanted to do. Let's assume I wanted to do a 45 to 50 mile V-pace ride, and I wanted to do it on, say, December 8th. The thing I would do is to take a look in the monthly ride. now.
I'm hearing your clicking, Steve, but
Okay, that was probably the the mouse.
okay, yeah, I lose the audio a little bit when you're clicking, so.
Okay, so what? Okay, well, I have to. Okay, so I've looked at the monthly ride schedule. I see no conflict on that day. I can expand it a little bit. See what the ride. Now.
Steve, I'm losing your audio completely as you're clicking around. I don't know if there's any way that.
Okay, well let me. Does that work better?
I can hear you now.
Okay, I'll use my finger. Okay. Did we miss the first part of that?
Very little audio came through as you were giving that tour, I'm afraid.
We should start over. Maybe we should start over. Okay. Okay, just to repeat what I had said, I'm looking to put in a 45 to 50 mile ride at a B pace. So I go to Tours and Cue Sheets, and I put of 50 miles. Now I have that and each of which is between 45 and 50 miles. Can you hear me, Scott?
I can. If you can try not to talk while you're mousing about and do the talking when you're not moving things about, maybe that'll work.
Okay.
That does hamstring the demo a little bit, I realize, but otherwise people won't get it. People are impressed nonetheless, but let's try to make sure they get the full content.
Okay. Let's assume that that I've decided that I want to lead. I look at this ride. I can actually, if I want to, I can view the cue sheet for all of these 5 rides. I take a look at the cue sheet. I decide that. And then I click on PAH, which stands for Propose Ad Hoc Ride. Takes me to the screen where I can propose an ad hoc ride, which I'm going to do. I'm going to propose to do tour number 78, Pluckham and Somerset Rivers. I'm going to do it at a B pace. I can put in comments if I want. Let's assume I don't have any comments. let's assume that I'm going to do this ride on October 8th. So, pace, great. And let's suppose that I want to start at 10 a.m. Okay, so I've now proposed a as ride coordinator, I received email from that someone has proposed a ride, and basically describing what the ride is. I can find that ride down here. There's the ride that was just proposed. Now, what I will then do is I will take a look at the monthly ride schedule. To approve that, perusing the side is at a beat.
Not hearing anything at all from you, Steve, as you're going through this.
Okay, what I was then was simply looking through the schedule for the 7 days after the ride to determine if that ride was in the schedule as a duplicate within the 7 days following the ride, because that's our club's criterion for ad hoc approval. Having discovered that it isn't there, I'm going to
Okay, we're not getting much of the audio. I think people are pretty impressed with this. I think we might want to, if you do most of this talking and not clicking, or go ahead and let me grab the screen back. Unfortunately, it's going rough.
Okay. Can I try without clicking?
Yeah, if you can give it to us real quick without clicking. I think a lot of it's kind of self-explanatory, but we're not hearing the discussion.
Did you hear that? Okay.
Yes,
well,
I hear you.
Having approved the ride, a message then goes to the the person who proposed it telling them that it has been approved. And at the same abroad, everyone in the club who has indicated an interest in being informed about ad hoc rides at that pace, and that happens basically at the same time.
Yeah, I would say just one of the comments that we got that I think is addressed by the fact that this is going out, it broadcast everybody who said, I want to know about ad hoc C rides or ad hoc A rides. Someone is saying, well, our club, we keep it simple. We just all show up at the designated spot. We decide on a ride, and we go. You've got a lot of members. You're dispersed over a huge area, and a lot of what's baked into the system is the ability to notify people so they know ahead of time what the ride is going to be, and if it's a route they want to do, if it's a pace they want to do, if it's some place that they can get to. So that's some of the reason why this, I think, is worth the trouble to you. Is that fair to say?
Well, yes. I mean, basically, because we run so many different rides across a broad area, and we have membership spread that is interested in many different paces and wants to ride from many different places on the same day, we have to have a way of informing people. What we found when we first started was that if we sent everyone an email whenever there was an ad hoc, people felt like they were getting overwhelmed with emails. So we found a way to, using the website, to inform different groups about different paces.
Okay, great. I'm going to go ahead and pull the screen back here. Okay. And I do just also want to say we did a webinar on websites within about the past year, and Jay Marowitz of the Morris Area Freewheelers was one of the presenters, I think the primary presenter on that panel, and gave a show of some of the rest of the functionality. So if you're interested in what's going on with the Morris Area Freewheelers site, you can go and find that webinar. I love this opportunity to refer back to the past webinars and direct people back there. There's a more extensive tour there, and also in that, I believe the company that built your site is interested in licensing it to other bike clubs. So those that think they might be able to use something like this, found it interesting, I would urge you to go back to that other webinar, the one on websites with Jay Marowitz of the Morris Area Freewheelers. And any quick final thoughts on ad hoc ride planning? Steve?
Well, just that from my perspective, and what I have found is that we think it's really important to establish guidelines and to stay with them in terms of ad hocs. And we found that even with even having guidelines that we applied, we still approve almost all of the ads that are proposed. And it seems like the more comfortable people ride, the more ad hoc rides we get compared to regular monthly sign-ups. The trend is definitely going in that way, and as I said, right now it's sort of around 40%.
How long does it take you, how long ahead of time do people need to sign up to get it approved and to have enough time for people to see the notice and change their schedules to get there? What do you recommend?
Well, basically, if a ride meets my guidelines, I'll approve it the night before it's going to take place. Because our members are pretty aware that they need to look at their email to see if there's any new rides. And as I said, as soon as I approve the ride, it goes immediately into our online schedule in addition to being broadcast. So there's no reason, as far as we can see, not to allow people to put in rides almost certainly until the day before. We certainly would. I would certainly approve rides that came in the day before.
Okay, great. Dana, anything you'd like to add in terms of the ad hoc rides? You do it fairly informally via your email list, I believe.
We do it much more informally, and it seems to work well. You know, we typically have a core group of about 20 or so that would join on or be interested in that sort of thing. Sometimes, you know, a few others. But yeah, we just typically use a discussion board for it, and it works well.
Great. Before we move on, something that we hadn't explicitly put in here that we're getting a lot of questions on is insurance and liability. We have conducted previous webinars. We do 2 a year on insurance, one where we get feedback from the previous year's program that we offer through the league, and one rolling out the insurance policy where we can spend an entire evening talking simply about waivers. And we may touch on that here, but I definitely urge people who are interested in insurance and liability issues to refer back to some of the previous webinars or just get in contact with me. Scott Williams, Membership Director. I handle the insurance policy that League provides from our end, and I'm happy to provide you with or get you answers on some of these questions. We'll try to touch on some of the other ones as we move in now into talking about the day of the ride, and how some of those liability and waiver issues are handled, but we can't cover all the questions that I know that people have about these. And my email, if you do want to get in contact with me about the League's insurance program for clubs, is Scott, SCOTT, @bikeleague.org. It probably came with some of your registration materials. Anything that we don't answer adequately tonight, you can get in touch with me about those liability issues. Now, moving forward and getting more to ride leadership, people are asking already how the Morris Area Freewheelers handles preparing people to be ride leaders. So, Steve, you're now on. You have the floor to answer that question.
Okay. Well, we welcome new ride leaders, and we recruit ride leaders from experienced riders who've been on a number of club rides. There's a button on the website of people who aren't ride leaders that says "Make me a ride leader," and if someone hits that button, it comes to me. I take a look at how long they've been a member of the club. If I don't know them, I ask them a few questions about how many rides they've been on, how frequently they ride with us. If I can establish that the person is an experienced rider who's familiar with our rides, I will welcome them as a ride leader. Now we have a fairly significant. I don't know if you would call it a manual, but it's certainly a lengthy piece on the responsibilities of a ride leader that we ask all new ride leaders to review. That basically covers anything that they may not have picked up in their experience riding on club ride. So that's how we find our ride leaders, and when someone asks to be a ride leader, and I make them a ride leader, they acquire additional functionality on the website that gives them access to the Q Sheet database and the ability to propose ad hoc rides, among other things. Scott?
Michael, how are you preparing people to lead your rides?
Well, how we choose our ride leaders, we have a team that's actually sponsored by this local restaurant. Not everybody races, but people that just really like the ride. So we have men and women that are on this, what we call as a team. And what we do is really part of it's a requirement to at least volunteer for so many rides. And so we actually put a ride calendar out that everybody signs up for the ride that they can be a part of, whether or not they want to be the ride leader, if they want to be the ride sweeper, if a couple of our teammates will also just come and help just for the sake of helping. So we'll usually have a person riding in the middle And kind of how we prepare our ride leaders and sweepers is we actually meet before the year starts. We get together, we ride, we go over some guidelines. We actually go out and ride all the routes so everybody knows what the route is in case we happen to change something because of road conditions or such as that. We have a pretty strict verbiage that we use before every ride, which states the obvious things of safety and things such as that. But most of our riders are relatively experienced and have been doing this for quite some time, or are just enthused about cycling. So we don't just allow anybody to come in and join us. So usually it's pretty well mapped out at the beginning of the year. And like I said, our calendar is pretty tight. So each restaurant that we ride out of has that calendar as well. So they know which ride leader and sweeper and helpers are actually out on the course and the ride. So we're pretty tight-knit group, and it's a lot.
And Dana, I believe you said that your rides are essentially leaderless. You don't have formal.
We don't have any formal ride leaders, no, but speaking to what Michael said, we've got a fair number of experienced riders who sort of, take that leadership role whenever our rides do happen.
Great. And most webinars, I don't refer back to previous webinars quite this much, but apparently we've hit some sort of critical mass where we've covered a lot of related topics in the past. And we did one probably a year and a half, 2 years ago, about the League's education program, and one of the things that our League cycling instructors can teach is a group ride course to teach trainers to be able to lead group rides and help educate people about the skills necessary for safe group rides. So that is another webinar you can refer back to. I wasn't able to get a League cycling instructor to join us tonight to discuss this. If we have any LCIs in the crowd, and I suspect we do, that want to add something about that, we might get to you in a little bit. But there are certainly clubs out there that do more formal and rigorous ride leader trainings, and I think we spoke to some of them in that previous webinar. So now it's everybody's always anxious for the ride to start when you're actually riding a bike, and maybe some of you are anxious for the ride to start here tonight. And now the ride is ready to start, and that's another picture of Michael there. And so, Michael, I was impressed with some of the elements that I don't always hear about in group rides in terms of how you run things. So take us through the day of the ride and how you structure things on the day of the ride.
Day of the ride, all the rides except for our Saturday ride, because our 3 rides we have during the week are all evening rides, so they all start at the same time. What we typically do is we start a sign-up table, starts at 6 o'clock. We start staging everybody at 6:15, and 6:15 usually when we make announcements. We do have a lot of other cycle enthusiasts come and promote their ride, or however that is. We've got a lot of information to pass on to them, to the riders, and note that we do have up to 100 riders per ride during the summer. It gets a little crazy out there, but it is fun. But people they show up. We do have everybody sign a waiver. Everybody gets a wristband, and on that wristband is the phone numbers to all the restaurants, but we always make note that to be sure to call the specific restaurant that we're riding from in case they've got an issue out on the road and one of the ride guides didn't see them or had passed them, didn't know what happened. They can actually call the restaurant, and they can then call the person who is the ride leader. That is why we have a calendar at each restaurant, so they know which ride leader they can call. Typically, we haven't seen that happen in the last 3 years, but it's there as far as the safety aspect of it. And also, it's easy for us to see who is actually signed in. We make sure everybody is required to sign in, so that way, even when we're riding, we can tell who's signed in, because some of our rides are in residential areas or in places where other people ride. So some people will ride in with our groups periodically, but at least we know who's coordinated with the ride. It also helps our ride sweepers and our mid riders also know who's on the ride and about approximately how many are out there during our time. As you can see in that picture, that is our Team Go is actually what we are. We're sponsored by Spin Pizza and a couple of bikes. That's what we wear. So everybody knows, and that's a pretty specific kit. Everybody knows who the ride leaders or the ride guides are. We pretty much stand out in the crowd, so it's pretty well evident who is there. We each a location except for one. We usually have 2 routes. The short route's usually about 12 miles because we have a lot of novices that come to our rides and a lot of people who just out for that fun. And then we also have a longer ride. Typically, those longer rides are of a little heavier pace than the slower ride, of course. So we try to accommodate different paces as the ride goes along. The longer ride typically leaves about 5 minutes before the short route goes out, and that's just to kind of separate the groups in a little bit. Our rides typically leave on the same route, so then they'll split off at one point, and then they'll rejoin at one point. During the summer months, we put a water station out. Even on the 12-mile ride, we'll put a water station out, and that makes it about halfway for the long group to come back and run by there in case they need to. Again, because we have a lot of novices that ride these rides, that we always want to be prepared for safety reasons for sure, especially when we get temperatures up to 100 degrees and we'll still ride. So we're trying to make sure that we've got safety there as well. That's why we thought it was nice if all the routes kind of came together at one point, so that way I don't want to make it sound weird, but we're herding people in the certain directions. We want to make sure everybody stays safe out there during our rides. Once the ride leader, whoever that may be, who's actually leading the ride out, once we're done, we then ride backwards on the course to meet up with our sweeper, so that way we make sure that we actually shepherd everybody back into the restaurant or to that stopping point. We just feel like that's a necessary thing for us to do. Gives us a chance to debrief ourselves on how the ride went, how many people were out there, did we have any issues out there, so it's our time to do that before we, disembark. And actually we stay and we eat pizza for sure, and which most people do, so it's kind of an end of the day kind of thing for us as well. Let's see. As far as pace goes, I'll bring something up about pace, and I've been told I'm probably about the best pace setter, and kind of what we do have some, I usually lead the longer rides. I don't know, I think they just kind of put me there, which I'm happy to do, but we do have some people who like to ride faster. I usually set about a 16-mile-an-hour pace. That encompasses probably 40% of the people who ride on the longer ride. Try to keep the group sort of together. Those who want to ride faster, if they know the route and it's pretty well stressed, to have your turn-by-turn directions or know the route, and they're free to kind of go on their own and ride their own pace. Periodically, some of our other race team members will come, and then they're still in their kit. They'll usually lead those faster guys out if that's something that they want to do. But it's not something we typically do, but periodically throughout the summer, training season goes on, because we do have quite a few diverse riders that show up to all of our rides. It just makes it kind of more fun. Once in a while, even I get a chance to go out there and, I guess, put the hammer down a little bit too, so it makes it a lot of fun. One of the unique things that we do have, our Thursday night ride that we have, we actually have a mountain bike ride as well. We're close enough to some of the trails that we have. So we typically send out 3 riders out there with the mountain bike riders, and we can have upwards of 25 or 30 actual mountain bike riders join us for that as well, of varying levels. so that's why we send 3 leaders out with them, because they may split off into 2 groups or 3 groups and do a couple of different loops. That way there's always someone that's around with them to help them take care of things. And as the picture shows there, I'm actually stopped and had to help change a flat on the road, which is something that we always carry with us too. All as ride guides, we always carry equipment enough to be able to do some quick fix and or repair on the road, whether or not it's a wheel boot or anything. I had to boot a tire this year as well out on a longer ride that we were doing. So, just a few different things that we kind of carry with us just to make sure everybody gets back safely. I think that's probably about it.
I don't know if you do it under the auspices of the restaurants, but you were talking as we were waiting to get started about some night rides, some organized night rides. You want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, several people and I'm in the Kansas City area, several people in the Kansas City area at this time, because we all still like to ride, will host night rides, whether or not it's a gravel ride or a ride in the city. We just get good lights that we can see well, and usually those are anywhere from 350 to 1,000 lumen lights that you can put on. I actually put 2 lights on myself just so I can see a little wider variety of the road when I'm riding, and I'm typically riding gravel roads, which is just a different, unique kind of thing. Really, it's that or just rides. I guess you would call that an ad hoc ride. Everybody who shows up knows their limits and their liabilities, so it really isn't a sponsored event, though there's always a ride leader or there's always a map available. But those rides are starting right now, and those are pretty established routes as well. So, and then also there are a group that puts together night mountain bike riding here in the area too, which is actually relatively fun. If you've got a bright enough light, you can see everywhere you're going. It's nice that you know the trail, but at night it does change. It does make some things a little different.
And Dana, I think you said you'd had some experience with some organized night rides as well.
We have. Last year we had a woman who had done some night riding in the Philly area, and she started that up in our area, and we get, on a regular basis, a dozen of us or so. Once we had, I think, 18. So they tend to be little smaller groups. We require lights on the front and the back. It's best when you don't have flashing lights in the back when you're riding behind someone, because, as you know, it's like a strobe and it can be a little blinding. But the rides are a little slower. They tend to be, more in the 15 to 16 mile an hour pace. It's an easier ride, and the main goal is to not let anybody get dropped. The worst thing you want to do is have somebody be stuck out there by themselves, riding home or whatnot. So everybody really sticks together as a group. And it's really interesting to see the reactions of the motorists when you're out there. They tend to give you a wider berth when they pass, or they wait behind you until they can definitely see to get around you, because they're not exactly sure what they're seeing with all these flashing lights and headlights and whatnot. So it's actually been a really great addition to our club, and those are more on an ad hoc basis, and we do those, anywhere in mid-October until the snow starts to fly.
And I believe, Steve, you said that as a club, the Morris Area Freewheelers has decided they don't want to assume the responsibility of night rides. And you're very careful about making sure your rides can be completed while there's still sunlight. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah, we don't support evening rides. We have rides that start before sunset during daylight savings time, but they always end by sunset, and we calibrate the length of the ride very carefully to make sure that that's what happens.
Great. And Dana, any more thoughts, anything that you do differently in terms of features of your actual rides? We are about to get into the how to make people behave and how to manage pace. So some of the more controversial topics are coming, but just sort of logistically and structurally, is there anything else that you would add to Michael's outline?
The only thing that we really reinforce on our group rides is that if the ride is scheduled to start at 6 o'clock, we leave at 6 o'clock. It's not, we don't wait around for, 5-10 minutes lollygagging and whatnot. Wheels are rolling at 6 o'clock so that we can get back at a reasonable time. That's the one thing that we're really sticklers about.
Steve, anything else you?
That.
Yeah. Steve?
Well, I would certainly say that although we don't have evening rides, we don't have rides that go past sunset. We also have an approach of saying to people, be there in time be there early because our rides are expected to leave at the scheduled time, and they do.
Great. Now we're getting into I think the stuff where people have questions or maybe divergence of opinion, divergence of approaches, if not among the panel, then among everyone here, as we start to talk about some of the other topics. First of all is how you lay out the guidelines of how your people are going to ride and how you make sure that they follow those guidelines. Steve, I believe this is your outline here. Could you lead us off on this?
Sure. Well, every member of the club, in order to be a member, has to agree to abide by the club's safety policy, which is published on the website and contains a list of points of safety that I think would be shared by just about every cycling club. We also require our ride leaders to do a safety talk before every ride, and we've provided a list of points to be covered in the safety talk, although I know that not every ride leader covers every point in every safety talk. We don't make ride leaders specifically responsible for safety on their rides, in that we believe that every member has to be responsible for safety. One of our main ideas is that if you see something, you should say something. We preach that if you see someone riding unsafely, you should, at an appropriate time, generally in private, but at an appropriate time, you should say something to them about the conduct that you're seeing, and which they probably don't realize that they're doing, because I would have to say, in our experience, everyone from time to time is guilty of some sort of unsafe riding. But we all keep working at it to try to minimize the number of times that happens and minimize the number of incidents. We've actually had there was recently an incident in our area where there were cyclists blocking a road, and a driver that may have taken some rather unsafe steps to get around the cyclists, and there was a confrontation, and it made all the newspapers, and it was the talk of the cycling community around here, and everybody's trying to refocus right now on their responsibilities, both as cyclists and as drivers. We also have, as sort of a fail-safe, a published safe riding enforcement policy, which basically says if you, I won't go over the whole thing, but the point of that is if someone continually rides unsafely and you talk to them and they either blow you off or they continue to exhibit the same conduct, basically if we're told about it, we will, provide some counseling to that person. There are various levels in the safety enforcement policy, but at the first level, we just talk to the person and say, look, you need to, we would appreciate it if you would pay more attention to safety. We have, I think, never gotten beyond that level with that particular policy, and it's rarely comes into play. But that's what we do.
Great. And we'll continue this discussion. One thing that I wanted Dana to tell us about is that as a member of the Bicycle Coalition of Maine, they've put together this group ride guidelines card, and there's one side of the card here. When Dana, you tell me, I'll flip to the other card. Tell me how people get this and how you came up with this and how it's working.
Sure. So this is a two-part card that myself and several other leaders of various bike clubs in the area got together, and it came about after the Women's Ride group and a few other groups had been pulled over by local law enforcement for riding two abreast, not single file, you know, taking up the lane when you're negotiating a turn, yada yada. So we all kind of, this, like Steve's incident in New Jersey, kind of ran rampant through the cycling community. So we all kind of got together and said, okay, what can we do collectively as a group to try to reinforce good behavior, or to kind of get the information about good behavior out in these group rides, so that everybody knows the rules of the ride, rules of the road, they drive cars and all of that. But what do they do in a group setting? And also to be able to kind of take this piece to local law enforcement and go, and you know, we're really here trying to police ourselves, and we're trying to, you know, make good with the bike community as well as the motorists. So I'll just hit on some of the high points on this, the first part of the card. And this is a kind of a thick cardstock card, and it's meant to be, if you see kind of the dotted lines, it's meant to be folded up into fours so people can put it in their jersey pocket and take it with them. But the first one is be predictable. That's probably the biggest issue that you have in group riding, especially with novices, is that they're a little erratic and they're all over the place. So just making people be aware that there are people all around you, so you've got to make sure that you look before you move left or right, or be careful of sudden changes in speed or position on the road, and to communicate clearly with other riders, whether it's pointing out hazards or it's, you know, saying car back or slowing, stopping, yelling out hold as needed, so that those riders can hear you and know what's going on in the road. I don't know what all the laws of all the various states are about riding two abreast, but that's probably the biggest sticky wick, if you will, about riding group rides. It doesn't specifically say in Maine that you can't ride two abreast, but it does say that you need to ride single file. So we at least encourage people to ride no more than two abreast, so that, you know, motorists can get around and, you know, try to be courteous and be aware that motorists do need to pass you. Choose proper lane positioning. We've had incidences in some of our group rides where, you know, maybe there's two or three going up over a hill and there's somebody else coming from the back and they're crossing the yellow line trying to get in front of others, and maybe it's on a hill or it's on a corner. So really enforcing there's absolutely no need to ever cross that center line. Don't pass on the right of cars. Oftentimes you see people going, trying to get around cars, and they go to the right. It's best to stay, especially at an intersection, behind the cars, especially if you're in a large group, as opposed to riding single file all up along the line of cars trying to get through an intersection. And then if you flip to the second part of the card on the second side, not to block traffic in a regroup spot. So if you come to an intersection and you know that you're waiting for a slower cyclist to come up and join the group, move over as far to the right as possible. Let cars go by you. I've seen instances where riders will double back and keep like circling around because they don't want to stop, so they just want to keep moving. And that also confuses motorists, and they go, I'm not really sure what's going on. I've got riders here on the right, but I've got these other riders coming on the left, and you know, that's just not a good situation for motorists. And be alert. And you know, when you're riding out there, be aware of all the riders around you, be aware of what's going on in front of you, and don't avoid overlapping wheels. Being visible, everybody knows that, wearing bright colors, using lights in darkness, and not just in darkness but in fog as well. And I think the biggest thing that we really came out of this card was the center column. It says, "Don't be a jerk." There's so many cyclists out there, or cyclists that get perceived as being a jerk on the road for whatever reason, and just be aware that there are good people out there that are driving cars too. They're trying to give you space, and we need to make sure that we give their space as well. And then getting back to, I think it was Steve's point, is that if you see something going on in your group, it's not just the rider's responsibility, but it's everybody's responsibility for safety in the group. And if there's something that's inappropriately done, someone needs to say something.
What is the most disruptive rider behavior you've had to deal with, or the most unsafe rider behavior you've had to deal with, and how did you deal with it?
Oh, that's a really good question. You know, probably one of the most disturbing things I've seen is someone trying to motor pace a car. There was an incident where we're all riding in a group, and there was a van in front of us, you know, little passenger van, and they're going kind of slow, and one of the riders decided that they were going to get on the back of this car and motor pace. And I had to tell him, that's such a dangerous situation to be in. And she came from motocross, so she said, "Oh, I've got great handling skills, yada, yada." But you never know what's going to happen with that motorist, what's going on in their car. If they need to stop suddenly, guess where you're going to go is right in the back. So we had to really speak to her about that. That was probably the worst thing I've ever seen in a group ride.
But she was receptive to the intervention?
She didn't take it very well at first, but after a while she kind of calmed down and said, you know, "I kind of get your point, and I'm sorry," and, you know, we moved on. So.
Okay.
Go
ahead.
I could actually one time I was riding behind a guy in a slow car, and he decided to pass that car on the left while it was still moving. That was about the most unsafe thing I've ever seen. So, and the other thing was that it was a learning experience for me, because that's when I learned that you shouldn't go up to someone and tell them that they're riding unsafely in front of other people. So I learned my lesson at that time, that the best thing to do when you see something, no matter how egregious it is to make sure you catch that person in a private moment.
Michael, I'll put the same question to you. What's the most egregious behavior you've dealt with, and how did you deal with it?
Probably behavior that I think is behavior is crossing traffic on a red light. Basically, we tell them it's not acceptable, and you know that if they're going to do that, they need to not do that on a ride that's sponsored, because it all gets back to the local person who's sponsoring the ride. We're pretty blatant about it. We just, you know, really let them know, because they know the rules before we left. They know the laws, and we stress that before we get on our rides. And you know, that's probably it. I know I had to tell a couple of people that, you know, really knew better than to what they were doing, and I stood there and watched them. So, you know, really it's for everybody's safety and not for anything other than that. So really kind of try to strict the rules pretty strictly. So.
And anything you would add to what we've talked about so far in terms of your pre-ride briefing, how you prepare people for the group ride before you head out?
No, pretty much we run down, you know, we ride in both Kansas and Missouri, so we do have different laws in both states, so we just make sure everybody's aware of our state laws that we have. You know, in Kansas we can ride 2 abreast, and we just, you know, just outline those, pretty much the same thing that was outlined here. You know, be courteous to drivers and riders, and, you know, when in doubt, get in a single file line and allow the traffic to pass. I mean, there's usually a lot of us on the road, so we try to make sure that is done. And that's kind of why sometimes it's nice when we have 3 of our ride guides riding along, because then we can kind of, you know, just kind of ride up through the group, you know, and make sure people are aware that, you know, we still need to maintain our safety area, you know, just to be courteous because we're going to ride all summer long. We don't want anybody to think that, you know, we're a nuisance out there. But no, I think they're covered well.
One thing that I thought was interesting in your talking about your day of ride is the fact that you have these wristbands that identify people as part of your riding group. I know that one of our regulars for the webinars has had a problem with people just sort of joining the ride mid-ride, you know, on public roads, but integrating themselves with the group, but not necessarily representing the group well. I like the idea of, you know, you've got a wristband, there's an incentive to have it because you've got a discount on food when you get to the end. There's a reason to be part of the official group. So you've got the who's in, who's out, and how to control that pretty well figured out. Dana, have you ever dealt with any problems of people kind of party crashing?
No, but we often sort of encourage that. I mean, to some extent, we're often telling, you know, our group that if you can't ride with us, you know where we'll be after the ride. Certainly come join us, but we don't really have an issue with party crashers or people tagging on to the ride that shouldn't be there because it's kind of open to everyone. So it's never been an issue.
Steve, 1,400 rides a year. You must get some party crashing and need to control who's in the group or who's out.
Well, I wouldn't say party crashing. There has certainly been some concern expressed from time to time because we don't verify whether everyone who shows up for a ride who signs in as a member is actually a member. I mean, we all have membership cards, but I don't even know. I have no idea where mine is. Other than that, we really encourage people who come along who aren't part of our club to have an opportunity to ride with us. But I'd say by and large, we really don't have too many issues with people showing up for our rides who aren't supposed to be there. We offer people the opportunity to guest ride with us if they want, so they can sign in as a guest rider, although we encourage them to do that once and then decide whether they want to join the club.
And I believe that the Morris area freewheelers do participate in the League's insurance program. I am not sure whether Portland Velo Club does. We don't cover racing, so I think maybe not. The commercial rides probably not covered by our insurance, but it's consistent with our insurance program. If you're in the League's insurance program, that your members are covered for rides and non-members riding for the first time with the club are covered under the insurance program. So
Right.
that's your policy seems consistent with how we handle the insurance. And again, I won't get too deeply into that tonight, but we have in the past, and we will again. So here is where it seems like there's a lot that can be discussed. A lot of people have been waiting for this part, talking about pace and how you handle that in a ride. I think all of you are advertising a certain pace for your rides. But do you control that pace from the front? Michael, how do you have sort of a maximum speed on your rides, and how do you handle that? I think you said actually you let people go off the front if they know where they're going.
Well, most of the rides that I lead, everybody so far they know that it depends upon who shows up to some rides, but typically my announcement is the ride will be at about a 16-mile-an-hour pace, and those who would like to go faster are more welcome to go faster than that pace. And because I lead the group out when we leave. We make sure we get through our first stop sign area and get on our road, and then we start going. And pretty much, it's a pretty casual ride for about the first mile or so, and that's kind of what the pace kind of gets set to. And like I said, I usually let everybody know that, if they want to go faster, they can, as long as they know the route and they know all the rules of the route. Other than that, I pretty much sit at about 16 miles an hour and try to maintain that. And those who want to stick with me kind of stick with me. And generally, I get a pretty good group of people that like to just kind of ride that way because it's usually about a comfortable pace for everybody. Even a 16-mile-an-hour average over our 22-mile hilly route is still a pretty good ride, and challenges those people who are looking for a challenge, but not too overbearing that those who are not quite up to that speed can't still latch on when we get to our, our flat areas and stuff like that. Generally, when we kind of get to that kind of a group of people, I'm always paying attention to who's still behind us. So then there's a couple of places that we end up stopping just to make sure that we still keep those people latched on. So as far as the one thing about the no drop, I would have to say sometimes those rides that I lead are no drop rides, even though I've got a sweeper back there that's riding with a really slower group of people, because we may have people that are still going to ride at 12 mile an hour. It just isn't going to matter, but they want to ride that longer ride. So we've got that person that's back there to take care and shepherd those people as well. So I kind of set it from the get-go. I lead 2 of the rides in the area, and usually they're the longer rides, and that's pretty much my pace. A lot of people, I think, actually like to come ride with me because I actually do set that pace and kind of make that pace kind of a nice group ride as it's intended to be. 2 by 2. People can move up and in and around, as we get to stop signs or stop lights or however that works, and it just makes it kind of fun. It's nice to hear people can chat along the way, so they're not gassed. So it's more about fun and community than it is really anything else, because we all like to ride, so it's just kind of a comfortable pace to be at.
Dana, how do you handle your the pace on your rides? You've got a variety of rides, from the very casual rides to the race pace. How do you?
The only one that we really control the pace in is the Monday night ride, only because we encourage new riders to come out, and we don't want to set a blistering pace. We want to make sure that we get these girls to keep coming back by being able to stay with the group or not lag too far behind and not make it very threatening or intimidating. Wednesday night ride, we have our regroup spots, as I mentioned, so any of those faster rides that faster riders that want to charge ahead are certainly welcome to do that, but knowing that we're going to regroup at certain spots throughout the ride.
Great. Steve, one question, sort of specific question. Someone was saying that their club does a lot of 30 to 50-mile rides, long rides, where differences in pace can make an even bigger difference because of the length of the ride. I know that some of your routes are that long. Why don't you start off talking about pace and how you handle it for your longer rides, and then we can return to some of these topics.
Well, I would agree with your initial comments about how pace is a challenge, and it's certainly been a challenge for us. We do not control pace from the front. While we have ride leaders who sweep on all but our fastest rides, we do not discourage people from going off the front if that's what they want to do, and everyone on our ride has a cue sheet. So they can do the ride with or without the rest of the group. Every ride, of course, has a pace, and some ride leaders will regroup, and sometimes you'll just catch up. If you're one of the slower people on the ride, you'll just catch up at the lunch stop or the rest stop. But I guess, as I said, our rides have pace. They have pace intervals. So, for example, we'll have a ride that's a C pace, which means it averages 13 to 15 miles per hour. But at this time of year, we find that most of our C pace rides are going out at or near the maximum of the category. I guess it's just part of it is a function of people getting in better and better shape throughout the season, and they go faster. It seems like a function of group dynamics that even though people have reached a level where they could actually move up and ride at a faster pace, they're not interested in doing that because they don't want to leave their friends. We've tried to address that in a way by scheduling, for example, C rides and B rides that are identical at the same time, and that way people could move up to a faster pace ride while essentially riding the same route as everyone that they've been riding. and that's had some limited value. But it remains a challenge for us. We continually find that our rides are going out faster than we wish they were. We don't want to stop people from going faster. What we'd prefer they do is simply to go on a higher pace ride. But that's not what's happened in our group, in our club.
And I think you told me you have some difficulty finding people who want to be ride leaders for faster paced rides.
Well, actually, it used to be that we could not find anyone people would not sign up to lead our A-pace rides during the daytime. Hard to figure out why, because they were going in A-pace. So we implemented a B-plus pace. Now those same people sign up to lead our B-plus rides, and then they go out at an A-pace. There's a certain psychological warfare aspect of setting pace categories in a cycling club, I think. You have to figure out the psychology of what people will and won't do and try to design your paces to fit that. We did that with our evening rides, and it worked, but so far it hasn't worked as well on our day rides. So we continue to have B-plus rides that go out at 19-plus miles per hour, but if I were to put an A-pace ride in the schedule, I would predict no one would sign up to lead it. Another reason why we don't get leaders for our A-pace rides, I think, is that in our area, the shops, many of them have cycling groups that go out on the weekends from there, and they tend to be race oriented. So a lot of people who might be A-pace riders with us are instead on the weekend riding with the shop club.
Are you typically on your rides trying to keep the entire group together, or does it break down?
It breaks down. A fast group goes off the front, then there's generally a middle group and a slow group, and we have our ride leaders are required to sweep on all but our fastest rides. So there's always, they're required to sweep at a ride at a pace, at the minimum pace that the ride was set at. So, for example, if it's a C-pace ride, the ride leader is required to sweep, but not at a pace below 13 miles an hour on average. So,
well, what do you do when people show up for rides they're not capable of keeping up with? They're maybe not familiar with the classification or overestimate their abilities?
Well, and that definitely happens. Typically, I think what our ride leaders do is if it's someone who is this generally happens with new members. When it tends to happen with new members. And I think most of our ride leaders understand that if you have a new member on your ride, you should make sure not to drop that person. And so basically what you would do is the ride leader would make sure to ride with that person. And then, tactfully let them know that there are rides in other pace categories that they might want to try. It generally doesn't happen except with new members, because after you've ridden with a club a while, you have a pretty good handle on what pace rides are going to be most comfortable for you. So I would not say it's a major problem for people who have been members for some time, and for new members, it's generally handled by the ride leader in a way that keeps the person comfortable and heads them in the right direction.
Dana, any more thoughts on pace? Anything to add to what we've heard?
No, I don't think so.
Michael?
No, I think we're golden.
I am going to divert us just for a second. I know we're kind of at time, and we'll try to wrap up soon, but people still seem interested. I do want to, Eileen Schaubert, I hope I pronounced that correctly. Eileen, are you there? Can you speak with us?
Yep, can you hear me?
Perfectly. Eileen is with the Austin Cycling Association, and they have a more formal training session for ride leaders. So I want you to tell me a little bit more about that you've graciously offered to do.
So the quick summary is Austin is very heavy on LCIs, and Austin Cycling Association is the organization that they all reside under, or most of them do anyways. And we were not getting enough people to take the Traffic Skills 101. So when we created, in essence, what's our ad hoc ride category, we call them hosted rides. We created a 4-hour class. So it's modified Traffic Skills 101, condensed down as much of the information as we could on all the traffic laws, and then group riding, how do you handle, problems, the pace issue, all of those things, and then just how to run our website. But primarily, we really wanted to see better behavior with the group rides, and so this was our way of trying to institute some kind of culture change. So that's kind of the quick rundown.
Cool. I really appreciate you sharing that with us. If we have any questions directly related to that, I may come back to you. And I think that previous webinar on group riding and education, I know Preston Tyree, who was our former education director based in Austin, I know he and some of the people there may have covered that in greater detail, so that's something you can refer back to. I have just posted the link to locate the older webinars in the question area. It's on our website. If you go to our website, all the pages, that top bar, look for membership, go down to Club Corner, click on that. There's a side menu on the Club Corner pages, and there's one for Club Leadership Training, and that has access to previous slideshows and recordings of, I think, all but one of our previous webinars. And we've touched on a lot of that stuff tonight. And Jim Bruce, you've had your hand up for a long time. I hope it means that you have a question, and I hope you still remember it because I've left you hanging for a long time. Jim, are you there?
No, I think my hand's down, isn't it?
Okay,
Yeah.
down now. Okay. So I brought up the final slide, just other administrative issues. I think a lot of that is kind of self-explanatory. One question that we did have from the audience was what's the feedback process about ride leaders and about rides. And I think that you might mention that here, Steve. Actually, I think it might have been on a slide that got lost. But you do survey your riders about the rides, although perhaps only annually. Is that correct?
Yes, we do an annual survey after the end of the prime riding season of all of our members, and based on the outcome of that survey, we take actions to modify what we do, make changes to the way we manage the rides program and other things.
Do you have any more immediate feedback mechanisms for people that want to make comments on or evaluate ride leaders and routes?
Well, we don't have a formal process for evaluating ride leaders. Everyone has a button that they can press on their website saying "Contact Ride Coordinator." So I do get emails from people from time to time saying things about particular routes. Also, we do get feedback from people about detours and changes in roads, and those are forwarded to one of the members of our board who manages those sorts of things and develops detour cue sheets and detour announcements that are on the website for people to see. But a lot of comments either will come into me or to other members of our board, and when they do, we talk about them and decide whether we're going to do anything about it. But the annual survey is a big thing, and we use SurveyMonkey, which is it's a package that's out there, very inexpensive, and gives us the ability to filter the results in many different ways, so that we can determine where the issues are being generated, and we try to take action to continually improve what we do.
Always important. One other specific question, I think mostly directed at you, Steve. Do you allow rides with Strava segments to be posted on your ride calendar, and how do you see the liability risk?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
Well, let me see. This is from Norm Samuels of the Suffolk Bicycle Riders Association. Norm, I'm about to unmute you, so I hope you can talk and explain this better to us. Norm, are you there? Can you speak?
Yes, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Do you want to pose a question to the panel?
Well, Strava is a new phenomenon that works. Strava website and GPS-related cyclometers, where riders can establish themselves in on routes in different segments as the king of the mountain. And our club feels that it could lead to unsafe practices on group rides. So we've been in discussion about this, and I'm just curious if these other clubs have faced this issue and how they've handled it.
Well, I can say for our club, we have not addressed it at all. There's been no demand for it from our membership to date. I know it's not the same thing, but we do have we have accumulated a database of Garmin files, but most people, I think most people that I'm aware of tend to use either Garmin Connect or Ride with GPS rather than Strava. So we basically have had no demand for that.
Okay, thank you to my panel. Thank you to everyone whose interest has kept you here for an hour and 40 minutes now. I'll just give a quick opportunity for the panelists to offer their final thoughts, and I will, if we didn't get any to your specific question, I will try to email out answers that I can get answers for to those of you who have asked questions that we haven't covered. Feel free to contact me, Scott Williams, Director of Membership for the League of American Bicyclists, scott@bikeleague.org, with any other follow-up questions. Any final thoughts, Dana?
Yeah, just specifically about the women's ride issue. If anybody's looking to start a women's ride in their area, I highly recommend it. Make sure that it is women only when you do it. You'd be amazed at how many women want to ride with other women, but they want to do so in a non-threatening setting. And riding with men can be extremely intimidating for these women. And just go out and make it happen. You'll be surprised what happens.
Michael, any final thoughts?
Well, my rule is number one, have fun, and then number two is be safe, and that's all I guess is just really have fun, be safe, and if anybody's got further questions, you're more than welcome to send out my email as well, because we actually do a ride guide service is really kind of what we call it, and so I'd be more happy to answer further, deeper, detailed questions that anybody would have. But no, best thing is to have fun and be safe. Thank you.
Excellent, thank you. Steve, any final thoughts?
Just that with the right kind of administrative structure, it's possible to administer a pretty significant ride program, but it requires help and some not small amount of dedication. And if anyone has any further questions about the way that we handle our administration, in case you're grappling with these sorts of issues, you're welcome to send me an email. I'll be happy to try to help you based on our experience.
Terrific. I appreciate the generosity of all our panelists. The next time we get together will be the second Tuesday in November, because something else is going on the first Tuesday in November. That's going to be a small club roundtable where we'll just be seeing how clubs of 100 or fewer members operate and sharing ideas and ways of running a club of that size. 'Cause we do get a lot of clubs presenting of these things, like the Freewheelers, for instance, with quite a large membership, and we want to make sure that we accommodate our smaller clubs as well. Thank you again, everyone who's listened, participated, been part of this. It's been long, but a lot of information's been shared. I hope you can apply it, and please let me know. I'm always happy to hear of things that you've learned and have been able to apply from these things. Thanks a lot.